Yeah, we're actually going to get into the buttons and responding to frame requests. The documentation's actually been updated and codified. I'm going to post a few links here in just a second. But yeah, mostly just we got the frame on the page last time, and now we're going to be looking at buttons, and it's more complicated than it sounds. So yeah, static. That's what we'll look at first. Since we got some more guidance from the documentation and stuff like. Actually says here, I'll go ahead and drop this link here, and that way we can have a look at it together if you want. So there's the official docs for the Farcaster spec. Yeah, so this shows here basically what you should respond with the initial frame. It says that you shouldn't use dynamic content since it's cached. Something we didn't cover on the last one, and I wasn't aware of this because this page didn't quite exist yet. But you should specify, or they'd like for you to specify a body tag, which we didn't do that last time, and it still worked. And it doesn't say it's required; it just says should. But yeah, we'll probably do that too. Maybe stick in some basic like markup if someone clicks through to the link that could be helpful, or maybe we'll even mirror the app. We'll see. Um, and then yeah, that this we were looking at the what was it? The Notion link initially, and this actually has some more good information. And yeah, we'll be looking at under the constructing a frame, and then specifically the additional properties of the FC frame button and post URL.
Okay, so if someone's like just joining right now and they didn't come to the previous session, can they still like start up right now? Like what would they have to like click or do? Just have the Node.js installed? Let me see.
Yeah, you could start. That would be most ideal to probably continue from where you left off last time. For if people who are just now pulling up, I think we have a link to the GitHub in here somewhere too.
Yeah, so they would need the Git and the Node installed in their computer.
Yes, yeah. But yeah, you need Git and Node.js installed. All right, so we'll start from the same place. There. All right, so yeah, just a quick. Delete this stuff. All right, yeah. So just a quick recap of where we left off at. Make context a little bit bigger here. All right, so yeah, basically this is the bare minimum content that you need for a frame that we looked at last time. All we're doing here is linking to a static image. Really, nothing fancy going on at all. Just the basic information you need to get it to show up, and that's really about it. So I actually want to make some modifications to this as well based on the Hono docs for those of you who are joining us this time, or for the first time, excuse me. You may have seen if you've been looking at the frames and you poked into any of the code repos, a lot of them are using Next.js. Went to ship some HTML over the wire. I think that's kind of overkill when this little bit of text right here that we're looking at, we're going to actually organize it a little bit better as well. But we don't need all of that stuff essentially to get a frame generated for someone to look at. We can just spit this string out from our server whenever basically Farcaster looks at it, and this will show up. Warpcaster has some tools for us as well to um, debug our frames and things like that to check them out. To double check for the link. Debugger. No. I'll check for that later though and link to that. I should probably just go ahead and start a README for all this too. But so if you pull up the server again from where we left off, if you pull up your code in your browser, because we are, setting it up to where you can access it locally, all you get back is this string. But like we covered, Farcaster will convert this into one of the frames. I think I even still have frame workshop, so I can copy the link and post that in Warpcast. And we can see our fantastic image that we managed to embed in a frame. This isn't, it isn't like a regular open graph doesn't have any of the associated information. You can even see down here the little area for buttons that it's expecting us to put something in, but we did it just so basic to get the image to embed in the cast. And now we'll be populating it with some buttons here. I think I'll probably just leave this image. If someone wants to supply me with a better one, I don't really do any image related stuff on the regular. So I'll probably just keep using it the way we have it. So what I want to look at is adding some buttons. And then from adding buttons, well, the idea here is to get the button displaying in the frame. From there, we have to dictate what the button can do. And we'll actually be defining that. Sorry, I just ate dinner, excuse me. And we'll be defining that here based on whichever routes that we're looking at. So just to kind of walk through it here, let's see if we can find a good frame with a button that I can use as an example. Frame, use this one. So yeah, we can just look through this one here. Are we ready to claim? So basically what happens here, this is a static image. It looks like you can respond with a GIF. I know we had that question last time. So you can respond with a GIF. It looks like that's probably what this is, I imagine. Let's inspect and double check. Yeah, it's a GIF. So you can get some animation going in there if you want to embed a GIF. So what'll happen is these buttons are tied to web requests that we can make to our server. And we'll be defining those here in a second. But basically you click the button and it makes a trip to our server. And it said, it checked and saw that we hadn't liked and reclaimed or recasted, excuse me, to be able to claim. So this is one of those janky frames where you have to recast and like. Interesting. Has a lot of different actions that you can respond to. But every time we click this button, what's going on is it's making a round trip to their server, generating the image, and then it looks like I was able to just like brute force click through that. Very interesting. But yeah, so every time, I don't necessarily want to do that. Every time we click a button there, it's responding from the server, it's giving the new image, and then it's setting up the new buttons as well. And we'll kind of be able to look through what that looks like as far as like the request response cycle for responding with new buttons on a different request. We'll kind of see what it looks like to generate this stuff on the fly. We're going to be getting into a new library, the Vercel OG library, which is how a lot of these frames are generating the images on the fly. It's a really good library for doing that. You can style it kind of similar with HTML for the static images. For those static images we were talking about earlier that you have to return, you can it has a very loose, we can actually look at it here too. So this is one of the library that you need to know how to use to be able to generate those static images. And it's built on Satori, so you could kind of drop down a little bit lower level if you want to, but this one handles some edge cases and different stuff like that for you. Drop this in the Discord. And what we'll want to do, let's see, it just kind of gives you some general information that you need to know that it runs in Node, or if you're working on Vercel, potentially their Edge runtime. But what we want to do is install the dependency here. You can just copy and paste this command into your console, and it'll give you, zoom in here a little bit, and it'll give you the package that you need to be able to generate these images dynamically. A lot of this stuff is for Next. We don't really have to worry about that. You can just keep rolling on by that. And then we can look at here where it says these other frameworks and start to generate basically these images. So just running through this real quick, it's generating the image response for us and allowing us to do a little bit of inline styling on our images that we're going to return and specify a width and height, which looks like roughly some kind of weird aspect ratio, or that they recommend open these type of images be. It's like 1.91 to 1 or something like that. But anyway, so you can specify your width and height of the image that you want to respond with, and it generates this static image for us on the fly. You should be able to see here. Yeah, this is an image that's actually being generated. Oh, it rolled past it. Yeah, so this is an image that we're getting that's being generated by this library on the fly. And see, the cool thing about this is right now it's just this static information with the hello, and then it looks like some foreign words there, but we can supply dynamic information in the response along with our styles. So, like the ones that are checking to see if you're warpcasted, they're pinging the Farcaster API, checking to see if you've taken the necessary interactions and then responded with either, hey, recast this, and that would be an image response that says, hey, we checked and you didn't recast and like this, or you can respond with the, what we call the happy path frame here. You can do all that dynamically with this image. It abstracts, or with this image library, and abstracts, a lot of that pain in the ass stuff away. We can go ahead. I have already installed the package, so we can just import it here. No, maybe I didn't install it. That's okay. npm what is it? At Vercel OG. Cool. That should go away. Yep, declared, but its value is never read. Cool. So what I want to do first is, since images are essentially the basis of frames, what I want to do is create a button that will route us to, just to kind of start out, get us introduced to buttons, get us introduced to generating these images on the fly. We're probably just going to leave the default frame image the same for now, just because it's a random image we picked together off. And your first frame kind of doesn't matter. As we read in the docs here, Farcaster recommends the docs. Farcaster. Yeah. And then frame specification. And frame specification. So yeah, it gives us some general information that we need to know about response frames. Whenever a user clicks a button on the frame, it makes a request to the server. That's what we were talking about there. With a frame signature, the frame signature is the user information, which button they picked, the cast ID, things along those lines. It looks like there is a message type here as well. So basically just some information that's being sent along with the request, so you can use that to help filter the actions that you take on your server whenever that user hits that button. So that's that, which proves the user, which request came from the user. The server must respond with a new frame that's sent back to the user. Whenever we send that request back, it does have to be relatively expeditious. It tells us what HTML response code we need to hit. So this is just all kind of boilerplate stuff. The best practices for the initial frame, if you have to use dynamic content, which we're not in this case, it says to use a load button. So that is something to keep in mind. If you want that initial interaction of a frame to hint towards dynamicism, because it's obviously what they said with the caching, it's just going to grab the static image. So you want to include a way to refresh it and get the dynamic information. Or you can kind of treat the initial image kind of as the home screen that doesn't really do anything. It's kind of how I'm thinking about it. And then just have that be the jumping off point for your buttons and things along those lines. But yeah, just keep it like a cover image almost, if you want to think of it that way, or a background image that doesn't really do anything. And we're going to get moved down in here to constructing a frame. Just going to recap this real quick. This is what tells Farcaster that you're using a frame. Apparently there's some versioning going on here, but that's not really important at this point. These are the required properties. These are the three that we have presently: the FC frame, the FC frame image, and the OG image. We also put a title in there just because we ripped that from someone else's code. But that title will show, or should show. Actually, no, it doesn't show. I was thinking about that, so we can totally delete that. It doesn't even matter. So yeah, with those three basic properties, we have a frame. That's basically where we left it off last time, just getting that static frame to render inside of Warpcast. And then so we have these optional properties which get into the buttons and things along those lines. So I'm going to be introducing a little bit of dynamicism. I don't think we're going to get to the input on this one. We might see what we can get in there. But inputs were added recently. That's why I like that we're convening, somewhat regularly, because the standard is evolving, and it's changing. You can do stuff you weren't even able to do not that long ago. So that's pretty neat. And let's see. So we can see here, we get some information about our images. They have to be under 10 megabytes. Oh, nice. Right here, it tells us what our image type must be. So JPEG, PNG, or GIF. And that's just some information about the response. We don't necessarily need to worry about that. But that's really good information. If you have a huge image, it's probably not a good candidate for your frame. And yeah, JPEG, pretty much any image that you want is in that format. So cool. Let's see, rendering frames. Basically, it's saying, Farcaster does all that for us, blah, blah, blah. Let's see if there's anything interesting in here as far as just getting it done. No. All right,
Wouldn't
cool. So we're going to.
SVG be ideal?
Yeah, but the browser renders SVGs. Whereas stuff, yeah, you have to have an engine that, because if you've ever clicked into an SVG file or looked into one, VS Code, and yeah, so this is why you can't necessarily respond to make this a little bit bigger here. Can't necessarily respond with an SVG image because the SVG file is basically a big grid that has points specified on it. And if you're thinking about like from map, like an XY Cartesian grid that has the places where these images or these parts of the image are going to go with the width. So you actually need something that'll render this SVG file, whereas PNGs and JPEGs and GIFs or binary files are already rendered pretty standard file extension that everybody knows. So that's why you can't do that, basically.
Yeah, I commented on the chat in the docs you were reading. They say it's because of security concerns, because SVG can contain scripts and the clients need to do extra work to sanitize. It's there in the, and they mentioned the formats.
Awesome.
There is a little note about SVGs not being supported due to security.
Oh, okay, cool.
Perfect. Thank you, Sam.
There you go.
No problem.
And yeah, typically OG images, the Open Graph metadata images are. Can you use SVG in one of those? I've never tried to. You might be able to. So if you can, in that case, other than let's say you wanted to set up your own, Open Graph metadata for a website you were working on, I'm curious if you could respond with SVG there. I've never tried to do that. I feel like you might be able to. I'll figure that out. Anywho, so we want to look at our buttons here. We want to actually populate the area below the image on the frame and get it to do some stuff. As far as stuff, I don't know what that's going to be other than responding with an image that we're going to generate with that OG library that we looked at. All right, cool. Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and start the server here in the background. Make sure I haven't broken anything. Awesome. All right, and then let's look at adding some buttons. So, Workcast or the Notion docs had a pretty good code example. Okay, so they actually depreciated it. Let's run through the tutorial. Yep, here we go. So I'll drop this link here in the Discord as well. I am a big fan of copy and pasting code, especially to get started. And when we're just getting familiar, so this is the Warpcaster guide, or the Farcaster guide, excuse me, to getting the buttons. And let's just grab, we can have up to 4 buttons on our screen. So let's grab 4 buttons. Right, and my formatter doesn't like that I put on screen here. So let's format this appropriately. So what this will do is, excuse me, kind of what we talked about from our first session. Everything that's contained within a frame essentially lives, not essentially, it absolutely lives inside of the head part of an HTML document. We'll be able to specify the buttons with their index. Index just means where they fall in the list, basically starting from 1. So apparently they 1 base arrays, which is kind of cursed, but I guess it makes sense. And the content is going to be the text actually displayed on the button. Right now, these buttons don't do anything, but we want to check ourselves. Kind of when you're coding, an approach that I take, in my personal projects and in work, especially at work, is kind of testing stuff incrementally. So I've just added some code here. Man, I want to make sure that it works. So what we did last time was you guys watched me go through and deploy everything to a server. I was actually researching, trying to get the setup for Vercel, and I think I'll probably have that set up by the next one because you have to arrange your files in a very specific way. But what I'm going to do, the image response so it doesn't complain, save my file. But yeah, what I'm going to do to verify that this works is I'm going to save this because I have this repo connected to the server deploy on Railway. If anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to field those as well. But so I'm going to go ahead and commit my changes. Oh. Added buttons. Git push. So because I have all that wired up, it's going to start deploying that for me immediately. Let's check on our project here. I guess this would be a good point to ask if anyone has any questions or you, for the folks that are new, if you don't know what I'm talking about as far as Railway, basically if you have to have a server in order to respond to Workcaster's queries, essentially. And Railway is the place where I like to host all of my non-front end stuff as far as servers, things like that. So if you have a GitHub account, you can have a Railway account. All you need to do is link the two, and then you can give it access to your GitHub, and you'll have a place to deploy your repos. And it links in whenever you push, or in theory, whenever you push, I guess not today for some reason. But whenever you push your code, it'll go ahead and deploy it for you, get everything up and running, and more importantly, give Workcaster a place that it can, it caught my commit there. There we go. So, but more importantly, it'll give Workcaster a place where it can access your frame, because right now we're just running everything on localhost, and that's great, but that doesn't give us the ability to view it on Workcaster. So there we go. And it looks like we're deploying. Cool. We're all set. Good. Yep, right here. So this is our deploy link. Oh, that's the private network. There we go. Frame Workshop. Awesome, it's deploying right now, so we'll let it do its thing. Nothing yet. That'll take a minute while I wait on that to redeploy. And in theory, what should happen now is we have our cover image, which was that meme or something about the weather somewhere. And now we should, that was from our last iteration. And on this iteration, we should have 4 buttons that do nothing, but they should be interactable in Warpcast. And then they should have this information or this text displayed inside the button. So, all right. And that has deployed. Let's go ahead and drop it on over on Warpcast. See what we get, if anything. Cast. We didn't get anything. I wonder why that is. So I'm curious what the difference is. All we've done is add some additional meta tags. I wonder if it's because we removed the OG title, even though it didn't say that was required. Valid. Let's see. This will be our first frame. That's right. All right, let's wait for that to deploy. Cool, and it's building for us that time. Aha. But it doesn't look like it's picking up our buttons for some reason. Interesting. Oh, I wonder if it's because of this. Let's try that. Forgot to terminate the tags. Don't forget to terminate your tags. So HTML is the concept that some tags are self-closing, meta tags being one of them, just meaning you don't have to have the closing tag with the same, basically like duplicating the tab with the slash in front. So let's see if that did it. I don't think I'm missing anything else there. Let's try again. Server's still running. Push your changes. Interesting. Yeah, I was just looking for just to walk you guys through what I'm doing here. Check frame. Yeah, I was just looking for the option creating pull frame. Oh yeah, that's what we're looking at right here. I wonder if it would be in here somewhere. Debug. Errors. Oh, interesting. If we have something here. We can verify. I'm just looking for something to give me some feedback as to why, because based on what I can tell, we have everything that we need in order for this to work. If we go back, these basically we have these exact same. Oh, here it is. Frame tools is right in front of my face the whole time. Isn't that always how it goes? So let's grab that and load it. Okay, it worked that time. Very weird. So let me go ahead and drop this. This is obviously a very useful tool. Let me go ahead and drop this in the attached chat as well. So we can use this to debug our frames. And as we can see now, we are getting our 4 buttons that we specified in our markup, which makes sense. We're also getting our image there that we specified from the last one. Apparently it was quite cold in Wyoming. So we've now got we've got Warpcast rendering our frames. I'm really not sure what's going on in the actual embed process there. That almost threw me off pretty poorly. Oh, nice. It even has here, so it's showing you that you have everything that you need. I imagine it would be complaining if we didn't. Input text, we see we don't have that set. So this is basically just showing us everything that we have set and that it is set appropriately. So yeah, definitely recommend this if you want to. I mean, that could very well, you could have written, very well happen to you. You could have written your code, you think you've done everything right, but for some reason it's not popping up in the home feed the way you expect it to. You think you did something wrong. You guys just went down that rabbit hole with me. So this debugger is going to be very useful. It looks like it's not doing any sort of caching or anything along those lines. It's just going to straight load it. Because what a lot of times will happen with web services is the first time you do something, the response to that request gets cached. And because I don't know if I had an error or something in that first one, or maybe it's just not loading correctly, but let's just say I deployed it incorrectly the first time there was something wrong with the code. That first response that the server got may sit in the server's memory for a little while. They're probably doing some sort of caching. That's what it seems like. Or I could be totally off, but that's most likely it. All right, so we have the buttons now, but they don't do anything, and we don't care about them. But what we want to do is deal with our button links. So, I'm sorry, the button clicks. So what happens is we can specify a URL inside the button or along with the button action. And what it'll do, it'll send a post request. If you'll remember when we reviewed the HTML verbs last time, get, put, post, things along those lines. Post allows us to send data to our, or basically what'll happen is Warpcast is sending data to our server. And that'll go through here. Sends it along with the button ID, the user's Farcaster ID, and other useful information when the button is clicked. It looks like they have unsigned and signed version of the data, which is fine, no big deal. And we need to respond to button clicks with the new frame, so that's really important. And that's where Arborcell OG comes in, and we'll look at that too. So what we need to do, so we'll see here, the frame button, that's what we have here with the index, and then the frame post URL. So yeah, this is what we're looking at here, the frame button index action. So it looks like it could be a post redirect, or a link. I think the link are the ones that actually allow you to push someone to a redirect. Now, recently, Warpcaster rolled out the ability to push someone to a site other than Warpcaster, or an app if you're on mobile. It pops up with that warning message saying, "Hey, if you connect your wallet here, you'll probably get owned," and then it pushes you on. Push you on to some kind of link that's specified. What some potential use cases for that are is, let's say you had a frame that was taking actions off a smart contract on behalf of a user, but you needed them to fund their account. That'd be a really good way to kind of white glove the experiences from the frame. You could link them out to your front end where they can fund their account and then take actions inside of the frame. That's not necessarily the best user experience in the world, but at least you have an option from the frame now to push someone to a site that you control for things like loading accounts or stuff like that. That was the first use case that I thought of for it. I'm sure there are others. But yeah, that's really how I think about it. Someone was talking about the cookies experiment earlier, where what I saw, I was following along with that bot. What they were doing is generating Coinbase Commerce invoices for these folks, and you think maybe they could have sent some generated that link dynamically for them and then bounced them out there. So you have a lot of options with those external links. But we've got the buttons on the page. We got them deployed. We verified they're working in Farcaster. Does anyone have any questions? Or Warpcaster, excuse me. Yeah, see, they're converting this PNG, or they're converting SVG to PNG. Interesting. Yeah, that's what I thought. Anywho, yeah. So what I'm doing right now is I just bounced back to the tutorial here for a sec. This is a working example of the frame server can be found in those links that we were looking at before. So I was just curious, kind of how they have everything set up. Page. Let's see. Layout maybe. I was just looking to see how they have their buttons defined here. Button. Right here. Page ID. Oh wow, they did some fanciness on that. So FC metadata frame button index option. That does not tell me what I want to know. Page 7 days. Frame button index option. OG image. This didn't work for some reason. Interesting. So yeah, right now I'm just going through the Farcast or the Warpcaster devs linked example to just kind of dig in here and see specifically what they did as far as wiring up the buttons to do stuff, because the getting started kind of stops right after that, and I am not terribly familiar with buttons, so let's see. We don't want to decode any metadata or anything like that. Basically, I just want to find out where, just make sure that what I think is correct. Basically, I was just wanting to see if, based on the specification, basics hello world. Yeah, if based on the specification that I'm supplying the right information, which I think the action target URL required for type link. So yeah, we're going to specify the button action, and then we're going to specify the, if it's a link, we'll specify the button target. So let's go ahead and grab this. Just going to paste this right here. Meta property equals this. And for the index, I'm going to start with button 1. So again, the indices are 1 through 4 for the button. So we're saying in our Farcaster frame for the button with index 1, we want to take this action. But what? And the action is going to be post in this case. It says it defaults to post if no value is supplied. So I think we can probably just leave it off and do like that. Button 1 action, yep. And it'll be post by default. Action target URL. And yeah, so this one, I think also the index target says the target URL. So I think it's going to be our server URL. I feel like that's correct. Not certain, but let's find out together. And this post URL, I think, is probably for, actually, you know what? I'm not sure. This post URL says the, which contains the signature packet. So I'm not necessarily worried about the signature packet right now. I just want to respond. I just want to respond to a button press. So let's have a look here. Action target. Yep. Over here. Meta property. One. Yeah, what I'm looking to find here, in case anyone's curious, so we see right here it has this very well defined like key and then value. It tells you what it wants in the content. Just wants content. Look at the docs, and then this is probably going to end up being the wait. Hold on. Yeah, defaults to post if no value specified. Sorry, that's throwing me off. I'm going to add that there because it's going to continue to throw me off. Fence post. I know that's the default, but it not being there will throw me off. So you don't have to do that. Action is specified now fully. We want to send a post, and what we want it to post to is our server. So let me grab my link here from the server. Just copy that. And then, so we need to decide what we're going to call the route. So right now, what's happening is what we can see here with the specified slash is this is the home or root route of our app. This is what the this is where Warpcaster is looking for the frame. It's kind of like if you go to google.com and with no slashes or anything like that, that's the root route. So we have this one here, and this we've defined our 4 buttons, and we've given one of our buttons an action. So we need to specify on our server side what's going to happen whenever this button gets pressed. So we know it's going to be a post request, and we know that it's going to come into our server. So basically, we just need to go ahead and specify how we're going to handle how we're going to handle that request coming in and where we want it to come in. So I'm just going to call this button 1 for right now. So it's going to, this needs to be HTTPS. And so what's going to happen is I'm going to specify this as well, button 1. So what we've told Warpcaster here at this point is we want button 1 to have an action. We want it to send a post request. And if I am understanding this correctly, we're telling it that button 1's target for that action is going to be our server and then our button 1 route. So with that set up and specified in our initial frame, we need to specify how we want to handle the button 1 information. So this, again, the way you can think about this is we've loaded up the initial frame. We've clicked that very first button that says green. Warpcaster is going to send the request to this frame workshop production .railway.app/button1s on the server. So what do we want to do when that comes in? Well, all I want to do right now is respond with a static image just to make sure this is chill. Inspect. I just want the raw image. Don't give me all the extra junk. So I'm just gonna kind of basically do the same thing here. Just drop that in a comment. So I'm gonna copy my initial information from the docs. Again, we know we're only required to have these. That's I have way too many tabs open. Here we go. We know that we have to have these three keys specified: the FC frame, the FC frame image, and the OG image. So we're just going to do that. I'm going to copy it from up here. I'm going to grab all of it, actually. Not all of it, just these four right here. I'm still not sure if you need the OG title. It tells me that you don't, so I'm pretty certain that you don't. But it, it didn't work earlier whenever I didn't have it. So I'm just going to be a little bit superstitious here. And we're going to respond with text. Just put our template in there. And then, yeah, just regular old HTML. Actually, I'm just going to copy all of it. Link. Key. There we go. And then I can just delete these. Don't worry about that. All right, cool. And then I want to take my image that I brought in here. And basically what's going to happen is we're going to hit the first button and it's going to send back this static image. That's the objective here, at least. Yank. OG image. And you could specify a different OG and frame image. So I'm going to make it the same. Let's grab that one. Stop it. Oh, I'm losing, folks. I guess I'm boring everybody to death. That's okay. We're learning together slowly but surely. All right. So if we've done that correctly, we should have a second frame. All right, we're building. All right, looks like our server is running. So just grab our link here again and go back to the frame debugger. Where did it go? Did I lose it? No, I should probably bookmark this. Load. Awesome. All right, let's click on the green button and see what happens. Nothing. Tragic. I wonder if this request is coming in on the server. Let's have a look. Well, that is odd. Let's check. Yep, and it never logged out that request, so it doesn't look like it's coming through. Log, boy logs, yeah. So no, that request isn't even being sent to our frame from here. All right, let's try post URL button and see what happens. See frame post URL. Try it like that. All right, our server's running. Let's try this again. It doesn't look like it's coming through. Very interesting. All right, so yeah, it's been about an hour and a quarter now. So we didn't get too far on the second session. We did manage to get the buttons added. I'm going to debug this asynchronously just because you guys are sitting here listening to nothing, and I can't imagine that's terribly engaging. But I'm going to debug this asynchronously and figure out what's going on. Probably pour through some other folks' code to see what it is, and respond here in the chat, because I'm not sure exactly what's going on. If anyone can spot it, please let me know. But I'm trying to figure out, basically at this point, how do we get the server to send the request to our, get Warpcaster to send the request to our server. Because based on what I think I know, at the very least, the frame specification, I'm sending the information. I've even specified the FC frame post URL at this point. Oh, wait, no, it's just post URL because I'm an idiot. Frame. All right, let's try that and see if it works. And then at least we'll know where we're at. Point. Our server's running. Let's try and load this again. Load, green. Yeah, it's still not coming through for some reason. Yeah, I can't, it's not really giving me any additional information about why that's not going through. Let's check network requests. Maybe that'll give us some idea. Oh, there it is. Interesting. What was the response? Failed to post request failed with status code 404. Interesting. Where was it trying to send it? Frame URL. So we can actually look here and see we were looking at that message data that was being passed back and forth, so we can see the information that's being sent to our backend, basically. Failed to post frame action, failed with 404. Really? Interesting. Says the route didn't exist. Oh, I've got a double quote here at the end as well. Really, as always, stuff like that. Let's see. Mike, what's up? Sliding in at the end.
Yo, GM guys.
GM, we're just struggling here with frames a little bit together. Well, everyone is watching me struggle, probably saying, it's this really obvious thing that you're missing, dummy. Haha. Cool. Let's try it again. Frame was validated. Cool. Load. Interesting. 400. Status code 500. Okay, so that's a different but better error. That is what I live for. Cool. Okay, it looks like it did actually come through that time. We console logged out our HTML request. Yep, that makes a lot of sense. Cool. And then all we need to do here. All right. Cool. So we got a different error message, which is progress. Let me try one more thing here. So yeah, on that one, I can tell the request did come through. I just logged out the incoming HTTP request right here. Well, there. But yeah, where we had that console log for C is just like the incoming request and its associated information. So I was just very curious here if we could get the request through, even if we had typed something else wrong and the request did come through that time. So that is good information. And a lot of developing is really just working through different error messages that you get. And yeah, it says path button one here. Cool. All right. Close this, load it. Fake and 400 again. Build status code 5. Interesting. That route definitely exists. I wonder what the 500 issue is. Move. All right, it validated our frame. That was successful. Yep, read our frame. We can actually kind of see how it's constructing the information here. Yeah, we have our frame information. This is actually pretty interesting. This is kind of how Warpcast decides how to display what you have going on. We can see our different buttons here, this post URL, which should definitely be working. Very curious as to why it's not. Let's load this up with a post request and see what happens. Scratchpad. The post request, so it's trying to actually get that for some reason. Interesting. So it's saying that payload fake cast frame action request failed 500. Yeah, that's not giving me any additional information there. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna call it there, and that's all right. I'm not defeated until I give up. So, yeah, what I'm gonna continue to do there is update that repo, and really kind of dig in here. I'm going to write about it a little bit too in the Discord to kind of debug my thought process and figure out what's going on and why this didn't work and all that. Because if I'm having these issues, it's reasonably likely someone else is, and that way we can document it and have it there in the chat there for folks. So we didn't quite get to where I wanted to, but if I can answer any questions for folks, thank you, Bix and SQX and Fatty but Happy for hanging out with me. We didn't necessarily get a lot done, but I hope you at least had a little fun poking around in your code.